There are only 2 times that the word Christ is used in all of Josephus, and Christians added that word to Josephus both times. In my previous video, I addressed the Testimonium Flavianum. You can find the video by following this comment. In this video, I will address the brother of James passage. In the Antiquities of the Jews, Book 20, Chapter 9, Paragraph 1. It doesn't take long to read the whole paragraph. About AD 61. And now Caesar, upon hearing the death of Festus, sent Albinus into Judea as procurator. But the king deprived Joseph of the high priesthood, and bestowed the succession of that dignity on the son of Ananus, who was also himself called Ananus. Now the report goes that this eldest Ananus proved a most fortunate man, for he had 5 sons, who had all performed the office of high priest to God, and who had himself enjoyed that dignity a long time formerly, which had never happened to any other of our high priests. But this younger Ananus, who, as we have told you already, took the high priesthood, was a bold man in his temper, and very insolent. He was also of the sect of the Sadducees, who are very rigid in judging offenders above all the rest of the Jews, as we have already observed. When therefore Ananus was of this disposition, he thought he had now the opportunity to exercise his authority. Festus was now dead, and Albinus was on the road, so he assembled a Sanhedrin of judges, and brought before them the brother of Jesus, who was called Christ, whose name was James, and some others, or some of his companions. And when he had formed an accusation against them as breakers of the law, he delivered them to be stoned. I want to interject comment here, but let's read the whole passage and come back for comments. But as for those who seemed the most equitable of the citizens, and such as were the most uneasy at this breach of laws, they disliked what was done. They also sent to King Agrippa, desiring him to send to Ananus that he should act so no more, for what he had done was not to be justified. Nay, some of them went also to meet Albinus, as he was upon his journey from Alexandria, and informed him that it was not lawful for Ananus to assemble a Sanhedrin without his consent. Whereupon Albinus complied with what they said, and wrote in anger to Ananus, and threatened that he would bring him to punishment for what he had done. On which account King Agrippa took the high priesthood from him when he had ruled but 3 months, and made Jesus, the son of Damnius, high priest. Unfortunately for Christians, context matters. There is a Jesus in this passage, but it is not the biblical Jesus. It is Jesus the son of Damnius, who was the brother of the man who was unjustly killed. The high priesthood was a family affair. It was a bloodline lineage. This passage points it out when it talks about Ananus having 5 sons who also served as high priest. The only legitimate reason to bring up James and Jesus as being brothers in this passage is to point out who became the priest after this man was unjustly killed. Christians think the only reason to bring up James, the brother of Jesus, is because we're talking about their Lord. But yet Josephus doesn't talk about their biblical Lord anywhere in the entirety of all of his writings. So some Christian at some time added this phrase, who was called the Christ, because they knew that both Christians and scholars would be either ignorant enough or dishonest enough to take this out of its context and assume that it is a reference to the biblical Jesus. But I'm not done. I have more. In the next paragraph, paragraph 2, it's still talking about Jesus, the son of Damnius, who became high priest. It says, for he, speaking of the high priest Ananias, was a great hoarder up of money. He therefore cultivated the friendship of Albinus and of the high priest Jesus, the son of Damnius, because context tells you who he's talking about, by making them presents. I didn't find anything in paragraph 3 that's relevant to this video, but in paragraph 4 we find something else. It says, and now Jesus, the son of Gamaliel, became the successor to Jesus, the son of Damnius, in the high priesthood. So Jesus, the son of Damnius, is one of the main characters in this collection of paragraphs. And the most reasonable conclusion is that this was the Jesus that was the brother of the man that was unjustly killed, whose name was James. And I find it interesting that there was another Jesus who took over the high priest after this Jesus, the son of Damnius. Christians seem to think that there's only one Jesus who has ever lived, and it must be their Jesus. It is most reasonable to conclude that the 2 times that the word Christ is used in all of Josephus, it was added by Christians. Josephus never wrote about the biblical Jesus at all, and Christians had to add their Jesus to the Josephus record because Josephus didn't say anything about him. And when Christians have to add their Jesus to history, it's a bad look. And for those of you who watched the video to this point, I have a surprise for you. In Josephus's War of the Jews, Book 6, Chapter 5, Paragraph 4, we get a better understanding of Josephus's expectations of a Messiah or a Christ, but he doesn't use the word Christ. But now, what did the most elevate them in undertaking this war was an ambiguous oracle that was also found in their sacred writings, how about that time one from their country should become governor of the habitable earth. The Jews took this prediction to belong to themselves in particular, and many of the wise men were thereby deceived in their determination. Now this oracle certainly denoted the government of Vespasian, who was appointed emperor in Judea. Josephus is referencing Jewish prophecies that predicted some person to come from Judea to rule the world. This is the Messianic prophecies, but he doesn't use the word Messiah or Christ. And he says that Caesar Vespasian was the fulfillment of the Jewish scriptures. The Jews never expected God to come to earth in the form of a man. That is Christian and Greek philosophy and mythology. The Jews just expected God to send a man to bring victory, and whichever man would be victorious would fulfill the prophecy.